Welcome to Crime Most French, a fortnightly podcast covering intriguing cases carried out on French soil. Researched and narrated by Cedric and rudely interrupted by me, Melanie. We're the true crime podcast en alliance. Crack open le vin and let the mayhem commence.
This is episode 76, The Disappeared of the A6 Part 1. There is a stretch of the A6 in the southeast of France along the Rhone Valley that has seen an unusual number of disappearances over the years. In this first episode, we'll visit the Christelle Maillery disappearance. Between 1986 and 1997, 14 young women disappeared near the A6 in the southeast of France. For many years, nobody knew if it was the result of the action of a serial killer or the actions of many killers operating in the same area at the same time.
Right, so this is something similar. There are other roads that are kind of synonymous within the true crime community, like the Highway of Tears in Canada, which is from Port George to, I can't remember.
It's Fort George to Vancouver, maybe?
Well,
I think it's going west.
It could be. I mean, sadly, there's so many Indigenous women who've kind of disappeared, and there's been a lot of outrage, rightly so, about the lack of any police action.
Yes.
Also the same, very much south of Houston, all the way on the road down to Galveston. As soon as you get out of Houston, it can be very barren. It's a road I know because my mother lives in Houston, and there's a lot of shenanigans have gone on down there as well. I think there might be a Netflix documentary about that area.
Something, or maybe not Netflix, I can't remember. There is definitely a documentary, and some of the murders have been solved, but not all of them. Yeah,
so this is France's
equivalent, yes.
Exactly. I mean, it's such a... I mean, it's not... And you see that in Houston, not in Houston, in the US, there have been truckers who have basically been picking people off. Basically from the 70s. It's a real hot spot.
Yeah.
But
that's unusual for France because that's 14 young women in just over 10 years, 11 years. That's more than one a year.
Yeah.
In the same area. That's a huge number. And murder is not common in France.
No.
So
I would say it's probably the busiest outside of in the periphery, all the roads that head into Paris.
Yeah,
the
probably,
A6 it's a super, super busy road.
Yes, even though it's doubled in Paris, you have A6B and A6A.
Yeah, yes.
So you have a total of 8 or 9 lanes, but still, it would still be blocked when people come back from holidays.
And it's so funny when we take when we take our car up to Paris, we always do the gamble of will we take the 6A or the 6B.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a coin toss. But I mean, it's a road that for the French don't travel hugely outside their own country as much as say like the Brits. But what they do is nobody holidays, I don't think, like the French. They like to go within their own boundaries of their country, and the A6 is the hot spot.
Yeah.
All year round, you've got the skiers, and then you've got the Med. The Parisians looking to get away from the heat and then get down to the Med. Yeah. So the A6 is a busy road.
Yeah. So anyway, we will revisit these stories over time. Mm-hmm. We probably won't cover all 14 of them because the vast majority haven't been solved yet.
Oh, right, okay.
But there are a few that have been solved, so we'll go over them over time.
Right.
This one is the first case from 1986, and the victim is Christelle Maillery.
So, I mean, these are kind of like stretching all the way back, almost 45 years.
Yeah, 1986 to 1997.
35 years, 45 years. Anyway, yes, the mid-60s, 80s.
Yes. On Thursday, 18th of December 1986, Christelle Maillery leaves her high school to go home. It's a bit earlier than usual because it's about 11 o'clock in the morning because she's been excused from PE. She normally goes from the school to her house on foot, which in the 80s was totally normal. I did that for many, many years. I walked 5 or 6 kilometers to go to school, and that's perfectly normal. It takes you nearly an hour, but nobody thinks about it.
No, there was no such thing as a school run for
No,
me.
but there was nowhere for the cars to park
No.
even close to our school anyway.
Mm,
So even if some people had tried, it just wasn't possible.
yeah.
Our school was like in a dead end, and there was nowhere for cars to park.
No.
So it wasn't even possible to try.
Yeah.
So no, that was perfectly normal in the 80s. So there's nothing.
No,
weird
that's
about
not
that.
that's not bad parenting. That's
No,
just,
that's not bad parenting,
That's
that's
how
normal.
it was.
Yeah, exactly. She's 16 years old. At 16, I was going to high school on the subway because my school was too far. So she's 16 years old with curly red hair and freckles.
Right. Okay. So she's roughly about my age, or she would have been my age.
She would have been a little bit older than you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. She gets along well with her school friends, and she has an average teenage girl life. She even has a boyfriend. She's had that boyfriend for a bit over a year. He's called Michel.
What did you say? What color was her hair?
Red.
I have never seen it. I'm sure I've mentioned this in the past. I've never seen a redhead French person. A redhead.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
I've
no.
never come across a redheaded French person.
Okay. No, it's not very common here. It's
No.
brown hair is more common.
Yes.
At home, her mum is waiting for her to tell her some bad news. Her grandfather had a car accident. It might be bad.
Oh dear.
So she's waiting for Christelle to come home so that they can jump into the car and go to the hospital.
All right. Okay.
So she waits and waits and waits, and Christelle never turns up.
Oh.
By 12:15, her mum starts getting worried because
Yeah.
by that point she's probably about an hour late. She calls a few friends of her daughters, but nobody knows where she is. Of course, they were at school because they were in PE, so they have no idea where she's gone.
Yeah.
You can tell it's the 80s as well because her mum knows phone numbers for her friends.
Yes.
That would never happen now.
No, definitely not. Oh, you'd be putting something on Facebook.
Yes, exactly.
Mm.
And you'd be ignored by the friends. So yeah, and that's very definitively the 80s. So nobody answers the phone at the school because of course 12:15 means it's lunchtime, so nobody's manning the phones. And the local hospital hasn't registered anybody in Christelle's name.
So it's just the one family member that's in hospital, and that's a grandfather.
That's the grandfather, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, out of options, Christelle's mom goes to the nearest police station. There she's met by several cops who ask her a lot of questions, and they assume that Christelle has gone to lunch with some friends without telling anyone, and therefore there's nothing to worry about. Christelle was supposed to come straight from school, and she's not the kind of kid that doesn't do what she said she would do, so her mom doesn't believe that for a second.
Yeah.
As she's not finding the reaction that she was expecting from the cops, she leaves and drives to the hospital to see her dad,
Right.
who was in the car accident.
I mean, I think the thing is, I mean, she's not been missing a huge...
An hour, so yeah, it's not a lot.
I mean, normally I'm very critical of the police having inaction, but really running to the police after an hour, I would imagine you would have quite a hard job finding any.
But she knows she knows her daughter. She knows that she's reliable, that she does what she says she would do.
Yeah.
So when she doesn't, the one time she doesn't, it really smells very quickly. So if she says, I'm coming from school at 11 and therefore I should be home by 15:15, but by an hour later, something's definitely wrong and the mum would know.
You can imagine that they're kind of inundated with people who...
Oh yeah, the cops, I understand the cops' reaction as well. Yeah. She's not missing, she's just late.
She's just late.
She's
at
somewhere.
this stage, she's not missing. Exactly. She's just late.
And she's a teenage girl as well, so... nothing that surprising for the cops, but for the mum who knows her daughter, there is something wrong. At exactly the same time, the police cordons off the basement of a high-rise building not too far from there. It's about 200 meters away. A few minutes earlier, an inhabitant discovered in the bicycle park basement a bloody corpse. It was in the corner of the basement, on its back, and it's eventually identified as Christelle.
Wow, so I mean, she
was talking to the cops.
She must have still been warm at that point.
Pretty much, yeah. As she was talking to the cops, her body was being found in the basement of a building.
Well, I guess she didn't have a long wait.
Yeah, I guess so. A lot of the buildings built in the 40s and 50s in France have basements. The whole building is a basement as well.
Right.
And it used to be for storage and stuff, and also for bombing.
Oh, right.
So,
yes, of course.
So the buildings that are not far from my parents' house all have those underground basements. So that's the same thing. I've seen photos and it's exactly the same.
Mm.
The body had been stabbed many times. It also has some marks around the neck and a pair of shoelaces nearby. It's still closed, so the police isn't sure what was
The
motive.
motivation.
It was broad daylight, so it's also very unusual.
Mm.
Somebody being killed in the morning
Mm-hmm.
when people could be around. Not much has been disturbed in the basement. The bicycles are all there. There is no obvious trace of a fight. Christelle's bag is still there, still full of her stuff. Nothing is apparently missing. It doesn't look like it's been searched even. It's all well organized in the bag. Her wet umbrella was also next to the body and folded because it was raining on that day.
Right.
So the cops don't believe into a robbery gone wrong. It's never a robbery gone wrong anyway.
I don't know how much money is a 16-year-old girl really going to be carrying.
Yeah,
anyway.
exactly. Even if she has some money, it's going to be nothing. A few euros, and there's no point really. Well, francs at the time. So because of the lack of fight, the cops think that she met
knew.
someone she knew
Mm-hmm.
who somehow managed to convince her to go to the basement. And then she was killed. But at the moment, that's just their idea.
So I guess the small blessing is she hasn't been interfered with.
Apparently not, no.
But at this point, absolutely no motivation can be established at all.
No. There's absolutely no reason that they can find for her killing. It's just, there's no robbery, there's no sexual motive, there's absolutely nothing. It's just, she's just dead for no reason.
Mm.
So an autopsy is done, and it shows that she's been stabbed 31 times.
God.
Mostly in the abdomen, thorax, and arms and shoulders. The doctor notes that many of the strikes were very violent, and many of those 31 could have been fatal.
Right, so we're talking frenzied.
We're talking pretty hard stabbing, yes.
That's insane.
31 times, but 31 really hard times.
I mean, that's well, you can probably kind of like draw a line of who it isn't. And
Yes.
it's not anyone who's kind of like over the age of 60.
Oh, it's not going to be an old man, it's not going to be a young woman,
No.
It's going to be probably
It's
somebody...
going to be a strong, healthy guy.
Yes, yeah, most likely,
Definitely.
yes. Yeah. The doctor also reports that the first strikes were probably in the back, then in the front, and then she was strangled, according to him.
Oh, my God. Poor thing.
And he says that she did fight back because he found some marks on her arms.
Right.
The doctor thinks that the weapon used to stab her was pointy, sharp, and probably a switchblade.
Right, so nothing serrated or anything, just straight in and out.
Yep.
Right.
And about 12 centimeters long.
Wow, that's quite long.
No, it's a normal switchblade, but that size is not that long.
Okay.
But that's the blade. That's that long.
Yes.
Because it's a switchblade.
Yes, yeah. So
half.
so it's 24.
It's 24 unfolded.
Yes.
Yeah. So the cops start their inquiry. On the 23rd of December, 5 days after her death, Christelle is buried in the family plot about 20 kilometers away. And she's buried next to her grandfather who didn't survive the crash.
Oh my God, what a horrible Christmas.
So the mum is not having a good Christmas, no.
Oh, poor woman. She's losing her father and her
And daughter.
daughter. Oh, that's horrendous.
The cops search for the knife that was used for the stabbing. They searched the basement, they searched the building, they search around the building. They can't find anything. They rule out Christelle's boyfriend, Michel.
Yes,
because he was at a boarding school in Dijon, which is 110 kilometers
Oh,
away.
yeah, that's miles away.
Yeah, and there's witnesses there, so he was there, there's no doubt about it, so it has nothing to do with it, so he's ruled out.
It seems a bit, I don't know, it just doesn't feel like a crime of passion.
No, but because...
In the back, then in the front, and it just feels...
No, but the cops think that she met somebody she knew, so they're going around everybody she would have known.
Of course.
So, of course, boyfriend is the first port
of course, yes. I mean, you always look at the partner first.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't know, to be stabbed in the back and then the front, that's just low.
Yeah.
Mm.
So then they decide that the murderer must have been a local. Any long-distance travel to come and kill Christelle would make no sense,
No.
given that there was no robbery, no nothing. It has to be somebody who was there already.
And there's no kind of like online social network where she could have known somebody from just outside Paris.
Yes. So they decide it must have been somebody who was already there, so somebody who lives locally.
Yes.
The Rosas question people living in the area and all her friends. 2 women tell them that shortly after 11 a.m., they saw Christelle walk down in the street near the hospital, and she was alone. 300 meters further, she would have taken a right onto a track to cross a kind of wooded area.
Mm-hmm.
And she was spotted at the end of that track by another witness, and that witness said she was with a man.
So she picked someone up in the
that
woods?
Track. Yes.
Right.
Another witness reports having heard some strange noises at about 11:30, like moaning noises.
Oh no.
But didn't have much more information.
Mm.
The cops find a young man that was seen walking back and forth in front of the primary school that morning. The primary school was at the end of the track.
Right.
So essentially you walk down the road, past the hospital, turn right, go all the way down the track, and at the end of the track you have a primary school.
Unless you're waiting for your kid. Pacing
exactly,
backwards.
That's why he was spotted.
Yeah,
because that was strange.
Pacing backwards and forwards and round about a primary school makes you a wrong-un.
Yes. His name was David, and he had somewhat of a bad reputation.
Bad reputation for being hanging around about schools.
Bad reputation, in my head I have the guys from Greece. Because he's described as...
a 50s greaser.
Yeah, pretty much. He's described as wearing, I think, jeans, leather jacket.
Basically he's a T-bird.
Yeah, that's what I have in my head.
Go Grease Lightning.
Yes. But yeah, he has a reputation for being a street tough, I guess.
Okay, so he's Danny Zuko, he's Kaneki,
exactly.
Right? Okay.
So that's what I see when I see the description they made of him. He admits to the cops that he knows Christelle and he's interested in her, and he can't explain why he was pacing in front of the primary school. There's no explanation for that.
How old is he?
I don't have his age, but he's described as young man, so I would assume 20s at the latest. Oh no, he might be described at some point. He might be 18, 19, something like that. He's really just a late teenager, I guess.
Right, okay, so he's not some kind of creepy groomer.
Oh no, he's not 40 or anything like that.
Okay.
No, he's young. He's about her age.
He certainly was not born in the 50s, that's for sure.
No. So the cops now start thinking, okay, that has to be him. He has no reason to be there. He can't explain what he's done. He has a bad reputation. It has to be him. So
I'm guessing it's not him.
We'll see. He has an alibi for the time of the murder. He had a drawing lesson. And when the cops check, he was indeed where he's supposed to be.
Right. It was some kind of still life class or something, was it?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. And witnesses confirmed that he was there, yeah.
Okay.
So it could have been the man that was with Christelle on the track.
Mm.
The cops still think that they have something. They don't know what. They don't know how he was
Even
involved.
though he has an alibi.
Exactly, but they still think he has to know something.
Cops are so bad for that. Go with the bloody... the clues take you. Stop trying to shoehorn people into bloody crime.
So they let him go, but they keep him on the back burner. Don't go anywhere. Don't leave town.
So he's a person of interest. He's not the lead person of interest.
He's a person of interest, potentially a suspect.
Right. So back burner, that's him bubbling away.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The cops are contacted by the local postie. He was just back from holiday, and he had something to tell them. He describes that he saw a man with a suspect behavior at about 11:30 on that day. And as he was walking on the track that Christelle must have taken, he was pushed by a man running down the track coming from the street where the high-rise was.
Right, okay, so he would have been running away from the high-rise, the guy who pushed him.
Yes.
Right.
He was about 20, wearing jeans, and a fur-lined jacket.
So not Grease.
Not Grease.
He's not in the T-Birds.
No.
Right.
He had light and long hair, especially at the back. And here I'm thinking mullet, but mullets were not big in the 80s here. So I guess it's just long hair at the back.
Right. You'd have Jason Donovan running past him, or Pat Sharp, or insert whatever mullet of your choice.
Yeah, I'm thinking Bill Bailey when he was young, but yes, something like that. Things died down for a while because there's just nothing else coming up.
No.
In February, a knife is found in the bush about 100 meters away from the high-rise.
Right.
It's a 12 centimeter switchblade. Exactly what the doctor described.
Yeah, but I mean, we're talking it's been sitting out for 2 months.
Exactly.
2.5 months.
It's been in the snow and in the weather and stuff for several months, and there's just nothing left on it.
No.
So they don't even know if it's
the
murder
same,
weapon.
Yeah.
It looks exactly what the doctor described.
Yes.
They think it is the murder weapon, but there's just nothing on it, so they can't prove it.
And also, I mean, it's not hugely uncommon, is it, for
in the 80s, it wouldn't have been.
Yeah,
no.
for young guys to be
there would have been
carrying
loads of
stuff
those
like
around.
that. Horrible, but that's how it is.
The one thing that the doctor who examines the knife noted is that in addition to being 100% compatible with what he thinks the weapon was, it has special irregularities on the blade that the doctor says shows that it's been sharpened on stone.
Right, okay.
That's it. That's all they have on the knife.
Right. So, I mean, it's a wetstone rather than it being brand new or...
Yes.
I have no idea how you sharpen knives other than with a... Well, I guess you can get...
Oh, you have lots of ways of doing it. You have the...
Specific tools.
Yeah, you have the circular...
Grinding.
Grinder thing, and you have the actual stones where you...
I mean, a whetstone would be very... almost an archaic way of doing it.
Oh, yeah, it totally would be, yeah.
Modern... like how you would sharpen your kitchen knife, the thing that you put your...
Yeah, but all it shows is that it's somebody who sharpens their knife that way. That's essentially all it says. That's really all they get from the knife.
Yeah, I mean, that's better than nothing, I guess.
And that's assuming it's the knife that was the murder weapon, which they can't even prove.
No.
So to get somewhere, the cops contact the local newspaper and ask them to run a story on the knife to see if anybody recognizes that knife.
Do you recognize this knife?
No.
No.
There's just nothing.
No.
A few weeks later, 2 postcards arrive at the police station. They're sent to the commissioner, who leads the inquiry.
I take it it's not, I've been on my holidays, wish you were here type postcard.
No, they start with top of the morning, Mr. Guichot. Top of the morning is what I say. The way they said it in French is essentially what I would interpret as top of the morning.
Right, okay.
It was bien bonjour in French. It's a very old turn of phrase for hello.
Right, so it's not something...
It's not Irish.
No, but it's not what the young hipsters would be
Exactly.
saying.
In my head, that's what when I read the French version, I thought, oh, okay, that's top of the morning. That's just weird. That's not something we'd say now, but it's kind of stereotypical.
Yeah.
And the sender says that he lives in Nevers, which is about 120 kilometers away, and he signs the cards Christelle's murderer.
Right.
The cops tried to exploit the cards to find who sent them, so they have them analyzed.
Fingerprinted.
Yeah, and there's nothing.
No.
And they decide, okay, we'll take the road from here to Nevers, and on the road we'll question people. Which sounds totally crazy to do because that's 120 kilometers of many roads.
Yeah.
How likely would it be that you would find the one guy that sent the postcard and you couldn't even prove who sent the postcard in the first place? That was utterly stupid, but that's what they decide to do. So they go and ask questions and they arrest people, question them, and it's just, they're wasting time essentially. The one thing they do is when they find someone they think smells, they make them write, "I'm Christelle's murderer."
Yeah.
And they compare the writing to the card.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but there's probably 50,000, if not more, people living between these two towns.
Yes.
On the one road, and you could go other roads, and it's just, you're probably looking at hundreds of thousands of candidates.
Oh, yeah.
Especially since they know nothing about the murderer. They don't even know if it's a man. They assume it is because of the stabbing, but they have absolutely no idea. No. So,
it's either, our two likely suspects are Danny Zuko and Mullet
Bailey,
Man.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just they're trying to show that they're doing something, but what they're doing is a waste of time and
straws
resources.
are definitely being firmly clutched.
Oh yeah, it's complete nonsense what they're doing. But anyway, they try, but they don't find a match. Surprise. In June 1987, they have to admit that the inquiry isn't moving forward.
Oh, maybe what? We're talking 2 years later?
No, we're talking a year and a bit later.
Ah, right, okay.
So they decide to start from scratch. So they interview David again, the guy they arrested on the track. Because to them, he smells. That dude smells. That's the grease guy. Even though he has an alibi for the murder time,
they're still desperate
they don't think
to
he's
pin
a
it
murderer,
on him.
But they think he might know something. For some reason, I have no idea. He's a bad dude. He must know all the other bad dudes, so I guess he will know who killed that girl. That's what they're thinking, probably.
It's not the case of, she's a young, attractive girl. He is, in his late teens, so he's just basically a hormone on legs.
Well, he did admit that he knew her.
Yeah, but I mean, how many...
Oh, thousands of guys would have known her, probably.
Yeah, and how many of them would have found him attractive, because... That's all.
Yeah, but
all young blades want to do. They want to pop their corks.
He's a grease guy, so he looks fishy. So he must know something. So really, what they want to do is make him tell them who did it, because in their head, because he's a bad dude, he will know all the other bad dudes. They have a club, and he will know who did it, and therefore he can just tell them.
Club bad dude.
Yeah. They don't believe for a second that he's the murderer because he has an alibi. His alibi worked, so it's definitively not him.
God, they're really, really clutching at straws.
Yeah. So as it's the 80s, the questioning is a bit rough.
Of course. Are we talking coerced nonsense now, are we?
We probably are, yes. So the cops say that they were all civilized and they were just asking questions.
Oh, sure.
His version is slightly different.
Sure. I'm sure they were wearing leather gloves when they were punching him.
So he said later that they were very violent and they threatened to shoot him in the head with a gun if he didn't confess. So he confessed.
Of course he did.
So after a few hours, he said that, yeah, it's him. He did it. He killed her.
Oh, my God.
But the cops know it's not possible. So they're even more pissed off now because they know it can't be him. But because they scared him, they made him say it was him.
Yeah, they went OTT with the scare.
Exactly. That's not what they wanted.
No.
They just don't know what to do with him. So they give up and they let him go. So he confessed to the murder, but he's gone because what else can you do?
It's really annoying when your suspect tells you the wrong information that you want them to tell you rather than the correct wrong information.
Well, it's annoying when they tell you what you want them to tell you when it's not really what you want them to tell you. So anyway,
we needed you to come up with a third party, dude. Don't just admit it.
Yeah,
come on.
It's complete nonsense.
Play the game. We've beaten you the right way.
Yep. In February 1990, the justice system declares a non-lieu in the affair. Non-lieu means that the actual translation of non-lieu is it didn't happen. So that means that they have led an inquiry and they're not able to solve the crime. They don't know. They have nothing.
I'll tell you what they have.
So they essentially just drop it.
They have the right to be in bloody prison. That's what they have the right to. Beaten. Oh, it's so shocking that kind of stuff happened.
Yeah. So the case is officially closed and unresolved.
Oh my God.
And the danger is that it will run the statute of limitation. Because once a case is closed, at the time in France, after 10 years, it would be definitively closed. And that would be it.
That's crazy that there's a statute of limitation on murder.
But it's only after it was closed.
Yeah.
So if it hadn't been closed, it could run forever. There's no statute of limitation on murder as long as the case is open.
They should never be allowed to close it.
Yes, but they did.
That's insane.
So what the cops do is that on regular intervals, they make paperwork.
Right, yes. So they're keeping it active.
Because every time they put something new in the file, it resets.
Right.
So it runs again for 10 years.
Right.
So they do random interviews, they put in new evidence that isn't, whatever. They just keep the case open artificially.
Just so that it doesn't run minimum.
Out. Yes. Because that's all they can do. They have nothing else. But at least it's still technically open.
Yes. But not this time.
No. 3 more years go by. Nothing significant happens in the case. And the murderer obviously is still at large.
It seems kind of crazy that you would stab someone 31 times and not do anything else.
Yes, it does. And also for no apparent reason. So it means that the motivation is, I guess, internal to the murderer.
Yes.
Which means he's going to do it again.
Yeah.
Most likely. Yes. Christelle's mother despairs.
Well, I'm not surprised. Poor
Nothing's
woman.
happening. She doesn't hear from the cops anymore. And she's ready to do anything for a break in the case. So she goes on TV in a true crime show at the time called Witness Number 1.
Right.
I've never watched it. It's essentially Bobby Woo Woo.
Right, okay, Unsolved Mysteries, right.
Unsolved Mysteries, yeah.
Yes.
But with interviews, so people come and talk about the murder. It's not just a cop that talks, it's actually victims or relatives of the victims.
It's just another case that we've discussed where it's really up to a family member to try and keep this in the public mind.
And her hope is, because it's watched by 8 million people, which is quite a lot at the time, somebody will know something. Nothing comes of it. Nobody knows anything.
Or nobody is willing to say anything.
Or nobody is willing to say anything, yes. In January 1997, Marie, who's Christelle's mum, learns in the newspaper of the creation of an association to help victims of crimes. It's called Association Christelle. Nothing to do with her daughter. It's in fact the name of another victim called Christelle, and that's the parents that created that association with the name of their daughter.
Okay. Obviously quite a common name then.
Yes, it was Christelle Maillery. She was 20 and she had been stabbed 123 times in 1996 in the same area.
Holy shit.
By that time...
that's perforated at that time.
Yes. By that time, it had been 10 young women who had disappeared or were murdered in the same area. So we're not at the 14 yet, but within the next year, there's going to be 4 more. Hence the name of the series, The Disappearance of the A6. The two mothers decide to join forces and try to move the 2 inquiries forward. The association hires 2 lawyers specialized in court cases. They had worked on other cases in the Rhone department, so it's northeast. It was a case of disabled kids who had been murdered by a serial killer. So when the lawyers were working on that case, they discovered that the justice system was totally disinterested in solving those murders.
Oh, that's horrible.
And they abandoned the families, but they discovered that it was fairly common. It wasn't uncommon. So when cases seemed to be a bit hard, they would just move away. And
just walk away from it, out of sight, out of mind.
Yes, exactly. So they kind of became specialized in these cases because they had noticed how the system works.
Yes.
And they wanted to change it.
It's always easy to think that all lawyers are scumbags, ambulance chasers, but there are good guys out there.
Yes. Well, they are not ambulance chasers because they are criminal lawyers. So
yes.
It's not you have an injury at work or whatever.
Yeah.
So they request a case file for Christelle's death. And they discover something a bit disturbing. They discover that there is nothing. All the evidence has been destroyed. It's not there.
Oh, no.
And it's worse than that. Nobody knows why it's missing.
Oh, my God.
So either...
It's been misfiled.
No. There's really only 2 solutions. One is a judge ordered the evidence to be destroyed, which they can.
Oh, that's crazy.
When a case is closed and you have the murderer, they can order the evidence to be destroyed because that's it. That's done. Let's not fill warehouses and warehouses of evidence. So they can ask for the evidence to be destroyed. But there is no trace of such an order. Another possibility is that all the evidence was destroyed by natural causes, so flood, fire, or something like that. Again, there's no mention anywhere of a flood in the archives.
But the thing is, it's not like it's 30 gone. Or 40 years later.
No, it's just a few years earlier.
Yeah.
But it's completely gone. There's nothing left.
That's shocking.
Yes. So it's a disaster, obviously, because
totally.
They want to start the case again, but there's
nothing there.
Yes. So there's no DNA, no print, because the prints have been lost as well. There's just nothing. In 86, DNA wasn't important. But
no.
They could still have collected a bit of clothing with some blood or whatever.
Yeah.
And then test it in the 90s, but no, there's just nothing. all that's left is paper and photos. Some of the photos from the crime scene are in the file still.
Oh, thank God for that.
So the association hires a private detective to try to find more clues because they have to start from somewhere.
Yeah.
So he starts by contacting Michel, Christelle's boyfriend at the time, and ask him what he remembers of the time of the murder.
Oh, but he was in Dijon though, wasn't he?
Yeah, not because he's a suspect, just because, okay, he might have heard something,
Right,
he might have memories of other people, weird people, whatever.
Run us through what you remember.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
no, he's not a suspect at all,
No.
but he might know things, he might remember things from the time.
And know more about her life rather than
yes, exactly.
stuff
what
that the mother wouldn't know.
Exactly, yes.
Right, fair enough.
So he's 33 at the time, and he's easy to find because he still lives in town. In December 2003, the PI interviews Michel and starts making notes. Michel tells the PI something very interesting quickly. 3 or 4 years after the murder, an acquaintance came to him at a fair and declared that he was Christelle's murderer. And he offered David 2,000 francs, so about 350 euros at the time, as compensation for his loss. The guy was called Jean-Pierre Murat.
That's mental.
Yes.
That is just mental.
So when he was asked, why didn't you report that? Because that's a guy who said he killed her. He said that he knew Murat. It was somebody who he had a vague connection to. But he was known for his consumption of drugs and alcohol. And therefore, everything he said couldn't be believed.
Yeah, you had to take everything with a grain of salt.
So he assumed he's in that job, he's on drugs, he's just talking nonsense.
Okay.
He ignored it.
Okay.
So the PI starts searching for that Murat guy. And he finds him living with his father. He's 36 by that point. And when the PI interviews Murat asks lots of questions about the case. He's very curious. He's very interested in the case. So when the lawyers learn about Murat from the PI, they report him to police. And it would be 4 more years before Murat is interviewed.
What? They took 4 years?
Yes.
Oh, bloody ridiculous.
Most likely it was a combination of low priority of the case, because it was a court case. They didn't think they would solve it.
4 weeks.
Pain in the ass.
4 weeks.
Yeah, no, it was 4 years.
4 years, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. And also the cops hate when the PI comes with more evidence than they did. So
yeah, of course they do.
They want to ignore it, but at some point after 4 years they have to do something about it because it's there. There's a trace now. There's a paper trace of that guy coming and say, I know who might have done it. So they have to do something about it. So after 4 years, they decide to interview Murat. He's questioned in 2007 for about 3 hours. I can't
believe it's 2007. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah, that's 21 years. He denies everything, of course.
Well,
he denies having confessed. He denies having anything to do with the murder. And that's it. That's all he says. Usually the cops would have organized a meeting between Michel and Murat to compare and what's called confrontation between the fact that Michel was accusing Murat and Murat was denying. So normally they organize a meeting between the two to try to make them talk about it and find out really what
the real story is.
Yes. Unfortunately, Michel died 6 months earlier.
Oh, no.
Heart attack. So that's it. They can't do that. So they let Murat go. There's nothing they can do about it.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
So nothing happens for years again until 2009.
So we're 2 years later.
Yeah, when a new detective is appointed at the, it's not the police station, it's gendarmerie, but at the station. He comes from Paris. He used to work 36 Quai des Orfèvres, which is the police HQ in Paris, which is legendary. They have tons of stories. There's books and books written about 36 Quai des Orfèvres. And they're essentially they're considered like incorruptibles in the police.
Right.
Like they follow a case, they solve all the cases, and they're great cops and all that. So he used to work there. So he brings the same kind of attitude.
Right.
And he's kind of interested in all cases because he doesn't like when a case isn't solved. So he decides to go over all the unsolved cases he finds, and there's tons of them in the cupboards.
Right.
And he goes over them, reads everything about them, and decides, okay, I'm going to work on those few.
Right.
One of them is Christelle's murder. So 23 years after the murder, he doesn't believe that he's going to find much. because it's a long time.
Yeah. Well, especially as bloody half the information's gone.
So he decides
all
to
of the information's gone.
he decides to start from scratch again. So he reads everything he finds. He goes to the tomb where Christelle is buried.
Mm-hmm.
To him, it was a way of making it a personal matter. So
he's visiting her.
Yes, he's visiting her.
Right.
In 2010, a new letter arrives at the police station. The new detective finds the writing very familiar because he's read all the file.
Oh, we're talking the postcard.
He recognizes the writing in the postcards. So he thought, oh, that's interesting.
Mm.
When he thinks about it, it looks like another thing. It looks like the sample writing from Murat, because they made him write, like all the others,
yes.
I'm Christelle's murderer.
Mm-hmm.
So that letter looks the same as the postcard, looks the same as Murat.
Oh, right, okay. Thank goodness the postcards weren't missing.
Yes. So he thinks, okay, well, that has to be him. So he's arrested a few days later, and they discover that he was very easy to find because he had just been arrested for something else. He had been arrested for attacking a checkout woman at a petrol station with a knife.
Right.
So he was already in jail.
Wow. And attacking a woman with a knife.
He said he could hear voices and he wanted the woman to make them stop. So at that point, he had been arrested. He was in a mental hospital.
Okay.
Because he's obviously mental.
Well, I mean, if you take drugs, and rot your brain, then does lead to an awful lot of mental health problems.
So when the cop starts digging into his life, he discovers that Murat is obsessed with the murder. He wrote notebooks and notebooks on the case.
Yeah, he's beginning to smell more and more fishy.
He collects all the photos of the time. He collects everything. He's a collector about that case.
So basically, he probably could fill his own file fill in the missing information that the cops haven't got.
Yeah, but that's not proof still.
No, of course not.
So the cop collects all the photos he can find of the time where Murat appears, and he discovers that Murat had long light hair, long at the back. Mullety. And essentially looks exactly like the description of the witness of the man that was with Christelle on the track.
Right.
That's him.
Mm-hmm.
Description, photo, same dude.
Mm-hmm.
Murat, of course, denies the murder again, but now he admits that he was in the building at the time of the murder.
Oh my God, so he's putting himself there.
Yeah, he had lied at the cops.
He's a bit of a dumbass.
Yes, he had lied at the cops when he was questioned before, saying that he was at a training course away from town. That wasn't true.
Don't change your story.
Yeah, but
never change your story.
You can also wonder, why didn't the cop check his alibi? Because if it was a lie, it would have been easy to
Because they
check.
were too busy focusing on Danny Zuko, that's why.
Yep. So another year passes by, and the cops are busy collecting evidence.
Mm-hmm.
But as Murat is in a mental hospital, they can't do anything. They can't arrest him. Apparently, it's illegal to arrest somebody who's currently in a mental hospital.
All right.
So they have to wait.
So he has to be deemed to be...
He has to be released before they can arrest him.
Competent
yes.
to charge. Okay.
So on the 13th of December 2011...
Oh God, we're getting longer
Murat is finally released from the mental hospital and he's arrested by the cops.
Right.
He's arrested at his house.
Right.
And when they search it, they find dozens of knives. He's a collector of knives. And he sharpens them himself on a stone.
Yeah.
So the knives they find are examined and they have exactly the same marks as the knife that was found 100 meters from the high rise all these years before. Of course, they don't have that knife, but they have photos of it. His girlfriends tell the cops that he never leaves the house without at least one of those in his pockets. So that also explains why he would have had a knife. But unfortunately, we know that the knife is gone because the evidence is all gone. So they get an expert to analyze the knives more closely than the DME would have done. And he testifies that to him, the photos of the knife and the knives they found belong to the same collection.
Right.
So to him, it's certain that knife that was found near the building is part of that collection of knives you find at Murat's house. Same owner. The crazy thing is that Murat confessed to the murder twice to the cops in 1998 and in 2000.
What?
he went to a police station and confessed to the murder twice. But because he had no reason to be a suspect, because they thought he had an alibi, because he lied about it and they never checked it, but it says he was away, they all thought he was just a crazy dude who was confessing to random things.
So basically, you have...
So they ignored him.
They have a young guy who has an alibi. And they
who says he has an alibi, which wasn't checked.
No.
Yes, the other one, yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they beat the crap out of him, even though he's got a sound alibi. He was at an art class.
Yes.
But the guy who has a dodgy alibi, they didn't even bother checking up about.
Yeah, but that's the difference between the 80s and the 2000s.
Yeah, clearly.
Yes. So
they didn't want it to be him. So they were too busy focusing on Danny Zuko.
Yeah. So they had ignored him completely because that's just a crazy guy. So Mura is diagnosed with schizophrenia. Schizophrenia.
He's schizophrenic.
Yes. A judge has him evaluated by a psychiatrist who talks to him several times, and he concludes that the first signs of his illness appeared in 1989. And because the murder was 1986, he's fit for trial.
Okay.
So the trial starts on the 10th of June 2015. It's over 28 years after the murder.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It lasts 9 days, and the jury found him guilty and sentenced him to 20 years in prison.
Yeah.
Of course, he appeals, but loses the appeal.
Well, yeah.
And he then goes to the High Court, and on the 11th of July 2017, his sentence is confirmed by the High Court and is now in jail and will probably die in jail. And that's the end of the story.
And just crazy.
But at least it was solved. It just took 28 years.
Yeah. I don't have something peppy to say. It's just, I honestly, there's just so much incompetence in this case, things going missing, beating up, young innocent guys. It's just vile. And sometimes it just, doing these things does erode your ability just to be flippant about people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, watch this space for more of the A6
disappearances. Yeah.